Now, this was a long time getting to today, with the crash happening almost 2 years ago, back on November 2nd.
Henry Ruggs' high profile made every court appearance national news. Today, no different. 8 News Now investigator Kyle Payne has been following the case. Is here now to walk us through Ruggs ending up with the time he received and more on that. Here's Kyle.
Guys, this case unfolded on our televisions ever since the 911 calls reporting a horrific car crash. It was, as we know now, Tintor and her dog Max, both burned to death in the car.
You know, this is an agonizing case, David.
8 News Now investigator David Charn's exclusive interview with Clark County District Attorney Steve Wolfson back in May shed some light on the complications in the Henry Ruggs case. Ruggs pled guilty in front of this judge, Jennifer Schwartz.
State of Nevada versus Henry James Ruggs.
But Ruggs had 2 other judges before this. 2 of the many abnormalities in this 21 months of law and order.
I know somebody probably in there, but this is Henry Ruggs right here. This is Henry Ruggs right here, bro.
Ruggs most recently spent a month getting treated for PTSD after the crash, also in part because, according to his lawyers, Ruggs' best friend died in a car crash as a teenager.
Hunter is a young man who has never been in trouble before.
Ruggs was banged up when he came to court after the crash, and even though his blood alcohol level was off the charts, Ruggs declining to take a breathalyzer test at the scene may have led to his getting far less jail time than if he went to trial.
We believe that there was a strong likelihood that the blood alcohol evidence would be suppressed. And without that blood test and evidence, we don't have a felony DUI charge.
So the DA and the victim's family got a DUI felony plea bargain. Maybe not the penalty they wanted, but it leaves the victim's family hopeful.
And we pray that this terrible accident inspires positive change in the world.
So, after all that time and the twists and turns the case took over almost 2 years, today's sentencing only took 11 minutes. Back to you, Brian and Denise.
If you live in Clark County, unlike other places in the country, the company that picks up your trash can actually file a lien on homeowners who don't pay their bill.
And the company, Republic Services, has been doing just that, and quite frequently threatening foreclosure in every instance. Tonight, 8 News Now investigator Kyle Payne takes the trash company to task.
I'm just a normal person. Feel like I'm being taken advantage of and picked on. I don't know why. I'd like to know why, but...
But for this homeowner in Henderson, why is just one of the many questions piling up in this trashy tale of the lords of the local landfill, collecting overdue fees in court almost as automatically as a robotic trash truck barreling down a side street.
I mean, I could be on the street right now.
On the street instead of here at the house she's owned for some 26 years. Because one day, about a month ago, Rebecca Gondara got a notice in the mail that Republic Services, the exclusive trash collector in Clark County, was taking her to court and threatening to foreclose, saying she owes them a barrel of money, about which she says she had no idea.
I never knew my bill was over $10,000 until
she went to the district court and found out it was true. Turns out Republic is suing and threatening to foreclose on Gondara and hundreds of other Clark County homeowners, some of whom owe as little as $3, $2, and even just $1,000 in back trash bills. And state law says they have every right to do it.
And I don't think that at the time the legislatures were envisioning little old ladies who own their homes outright getting threatened with foreclosure.
Peter Aldis is a consumer rights attorney with Legal Aid of Southern Nevada. He says Republic Services is doing homeowners a disservice.
They don't have to do this.
But they do it anyway. Republic Services told the 8 News Now investigators in part, quote, "Unfortunately, there are times when customers' accounts become overdue to the point that Republic must exercise its authority to impose a property lien in order to ensure eventual payment for the services rendered. In 2022, Republic went to court 323 times, and another 143 already this year, mostly against homeowners who owe no more than $5,000 or $10,000. The lawyers, Williams and Starbuck, work out of this little office downtown. I spoke with one of them on the phone, Donald Williams. He told me Republic still needs to pick up the garbage regardless of whether money is out on the bill, and that his client, Republic, just wants people to pay. But even if the trash bills are paid, the lawyers are still in court fighting for their legal fees just as hard.
Republic Services lawyers play hardball.
I saw Republic Service, that's who's suing me, so I just went right to the source.
The defendant here, representing himself in this hearing from 2021, when COVID forced court hearings to be conducted online, told Judge Mark Denton that he decided to skip over the lawyers and go right to Republic to pay his bill. but still ended up back in court because Republic's lawyer, Drew Starbuck, wanted thousands in court costs and his legal fees.
All you're seeking now is a judgment for fees and costs, correct?
Correct, Your Honor.
And His Honor awarded Starbuck $1,500 in legal fees and another $891 in costs.
They just accepted my money and thought I was good.
I cannot believe anything Republic Services says, and I can't believe anything that Republic Service attorney says.
Rebecca Gandara says Republic's lawyers won't provide any proof that she actually owes them money.
They won't show me records.
And she says they never served her a copy of the lawsuit.
I said, tell me the truth. Did you mail me the summons? Because I never received it.
So for now, Gandara, representing herself, has filed an answer in court.
I have 9 defenses.
Will face Republic Services and their attorneys in front of a Clark County judge.
Judges are smart. Judges are fair. And like I told the attorney, I will do what the judge says.
And in the meantime, she'll pass on their offer to have her debt and, of course, legal fees and costs paid within a year or so, and instead, she'll make sure to keep paying her trash bill on time. Kyle Payne, 8 News Now.
Other than Republic Services, only homeowners associations, HOAs in the cities and towns in Clark County have the power to foreclose on delinquent homeowners. No other utility company or service provider has any such clout. Republic's lawyers say they haven't foreclosed on anyone as of tonight.
8 News Now investigator Kyle Payne was there, has the details. Kyle.
My colleague Vanessa Murphy has covered this case since 2019 when 24-year-old Esmeralda Gonzalez met a brutal end. Now Prestipino is taking a deal that acts the same as admitting he did it without admitting he did it.
My colleagues and I spent the weekend yelling and screaming and fighting, and we actually do have a mutually agreeable resolution.
It's a resolution nobody was expecting because last week the lawyers and defendant were in court saying their negotiations had stalled.
I'm open to negotiations, but the negotiations are giving the killer better end of the deal. And we have proof and statements that say that she said she did it.
That's the defendant, Christopher Prestipino, arguing that his co-defendant and roommate, Cassandra Garrett, might be getting a better deal. The two are accused of luring the victim, Esmeralda Gonzalez, into their home, plying her with drugs, injecting her with pool cleaner, and leaving her for dead in this homemade coffin.
It was made of cement, wood, and other materials that he had previously bought at Home Depot.
You understand you are being charged with first-degree kidnapping and second-degree murder?
Yes, Your Honor.
How do you plead to those 2 charges?
Guilty pursuant to Alford.
An Alford plea, usually used by a defendant whose best interests are served by pleading guilty, but maintains his innocence. In this case, agreeing to the set of facts the prosecutor would present at trial.
Do you understand that means that we won't have a trial in this case, which was scheduled to start at 1 p.m. today?
Yes.
So no trial after all, and maybe because the plea agreement came together so quickly, neither the defendants nor the victim's family were present in the courtroom. We asked prosecutors if the victim's family had signed off on the offer and hadn't immediately gotten a response. We will keep asking.
How young is too young for an adult murder charge?
Keeping in mind one of those young men charged for that Rancho High School murder, just 13. 8 News Now investigator Kyle Payne joins us now. Kyle, it's not an easy question.
Denise Bryan, not an easy question whatsoever. 4 of those kids range in age from 13 to 15. It raises questions of law and of science, and there are no clear answers.
We're just feeling a lot of, obviously a lot of really deep pain. And
unspeakable pain for the father of the 17-year-old Rancho High School student beaten to death by this group of teenagers. Most of the accused are now behind bars.
Next, I have 3 co-defendants. I'm going to call all 3 at the same time. So this would be Damian Hernandez, Dontrell Bieber, and Johnny Robinson.
We've seen the faces of the older ones.
Doesn't have a history before the court.
But we have to blur the faces of the younger ones because the law considers them kids, juveniles, being processed in juvenile court in a juvenile courtroom by juvenile court judges and hearing masters. But what those teenagers are accused of doing, killing another juvenile, has some pretty heavy adult ramifications.
I don't disagree that it's not an easy thing to understand how a 13-year-old could commit murder. But I don't want to exclude it from being possible.
Possible, says Clark County District Attorney Steve Wolfson, and even likely, based on each defendant's role in the beating.
Depends on the facts and circumstances. A lot of it depends on the attitude of that individual. Were they a follower of others? Were they a leader? How much of their behavior contributed to the ultimate demise of this young man?
A 13-year-old in Pueblo arrested for first-degree murder.
Young men making news, being arrested for murder all over the country. Not just in this one case, and not just in Las Vegas.
A teen accused of murder in Dillon County will be tried as an adult.
And some being treated like adults, even at 13.
Today, the state attorney and police chief issuing a stern warning that no matter your age, if you commit a crime with a gun, you will face consequences.
Meaning Wolfson isn't the only prosecutor making decisions like whether to certify young teenagers for murder as adults.
We're not talking about a 6-year-old. We're not talking about an 8-year-old.
We're also not talking about a fully developed adult either.
Psychologist Dr. Michelle Paul trains our next generation of mental and behavioral health providers at UNLV, who agreed to speak in general terms and not about any particular case, says 13-year-olds are still just as much children as they are adults, that their brains are still developing, especially the area behind the forehead, one of the last parts of the brain to mature. And that's the part that deals with problem solving and impulse. And that's where a brain begins to think ahead to decisions that can lead to life-altering consequences.
You haven't lived enough life to even know what potential consequences are.
Dr. Paul says brain science is clear, that the brain develops well into a person's 20s, as we see in this fact sheet from the National Institute of Mental Health.
Is the adolescent developmentally mature enough to be held fully legally culpable and responsible for their actions, equivalent to a fully mature adult?
Most of them haven't even gone through puberty.
The age of youthful offenders being tried as adults comes up often in our state legislature, most recently in February at the latest session in Carson City, where we heard timely testimony from the director of Clark County's Juvenile Division, Assistant DA Bridget Duffy, on that question of how to handle 13-year-olds in the system.
I'm not sure I'm there for 13-year-olds because when we look at the world we're living in today, I can't imagine now, sadly, a world where a 13-year-old takes a firearm to a mall and kills other children.
Duffy and the other prosecutors in Clark County's juvenile system have only prosecuted one 13-year-old as an adult in the last 6 years, and only 4 14-year-olds. Compare that with 180 16-year-olds and 278 17-year-olds. Duffy telling the state Senate dealing with the younger violent juvenile defenders is a minefield for the justice system in Clark County.
In juvenile, I mean, we don't have anything. We have been asking for session after session to create programs that would help us to treat violent offenders in the juvenile system until they turn of age. But we don't have anything. Well, there's frankly nothing in the adult system.
And Wolfson taking a more practical approach to the question, is 13 too young to prosecute?
I think to answer your question fairly depends on the 13-year-old. I think there are some 13-year-olds that are more mature and more advanced than others.
DA Wolfson told me police are using those other 5 videos of the beating to determine who did what. He also said those videos are even worse than the one in tonight's story. Those 4 younger teenagers will be back in court in early January. In a hearing that lasted less than a half hour, prosecutors outlined a laundry list of gang-related crimes, including internal gang conflict that led to the gruesome murder of one of their own gang members. This violent crime spree started on August 7th, when prosecutors say members of the Block Boy gang, also known as the Block Boy Mafia, robbed a 7-Eleven cash drop, stealing over 26 grand, but ruffling the feathers of some of their gangmate brethren, who weren't happy they were excluded from the convenience store stick-up.
As a result, on September 1st of this year, Enrique Nunez was murdered by 5 members of the gang.
In open court, that deputy district attorney saying 4 of them, teenagers Cameron Ray, Jonathan Smith, Jacori Magdaleno, only 17 years old, and Jamario Clark Jr., only 16, broke into fellow gang member Nunez's girlfriend's home, beating Nunez, pistol whipping him, shooting him in the head and body, and leaving him to die, which he did a few days later. But the shooting didn't stop there. Smith and Magdaleno and 2 unnamed juveniles kept at it. all shooting and killing a so-called mobile marijuana dealer.
Lured him to an isolated location, not associated with their address, but nearby one of their addresses. And all 4 of those individuals opened fire on him. It was in a residential neighborhood.
But some of those 25 bullets from 4 guns they fired missed, instead hitting one of those residents inside a family of 4 and a 6-year-old child, who somehow avoided tragedy.